Hello, this is the second part of the walkthrough through the content of the BraiTrix trap. As I said also in the first part, this is very, very funny for me because it's actually the first time, so I didn't prepare after I think 15, 16 years that I actually look through this content section. And the first part I stopped, I think, with the phrase, "This is for me the central rule of life." It is this one rule that most likely will happen in an environment where there is change, and change towards something better, something, a reaction to some input that leads to the survival or the more prosperity of a special deviation of that matter. And if that happens, then that special deviation, which is more successful, will then eventually, if it's constant, if the living conditions are fine, will then multiply and then become the most probable, the dominant life. And then the next, I don't know, million years, another, area will, and so after many million years, after billions of years, kind of the world is full of material that actually complies to this rule. And then what we see is then now after 4 billion years on the world, you have what you have. You have nature as we define it. Okay, now, but before going through the limits and shortfalls of this one rule system, which I just explained, the chapter 6.4 goes through what could be the future result of physics. And here, future result of physics is that, with Newton, we defined the mechanical laws. Then we had Maxwell and all the others, and that defined the physicians, the physics that defined the laws of electricity, of quantum mechanics, Heisenberg and whoever was there involved. And then kind of you have Einstein coming out with his relativity theory. Then you had Stephen Hawking and others like trying to put that into mathematical formulas, string theory and so on, which is immensely complex. And now the question is, will we ever discover what is the real system we live in? And here for me, a question is, and I don't know how far I covered that 16 or so years ago, artificial intelligence. So the big question I have now is, if artificial intelligence, super intelligence, happens to understand how the universe works, how it's composed, could it then explain it to a human so that the human brain can understand it? Or is what there is too complicated for a human? That's a question which I consider as one of the most philosophical questions. Is the system so complicated that we cannot understand? Well, okay, and that leads kind of directly to religion. So, because religion, then the question, can religions be critical? So can they be actually, can people that believe be critical thinkers? And that's a very difficult question, because their religion tells them what they have to think in many respects. And so they can't be critical. And then the question, is religion made by humans? Because they kind of hijack religion in order to rule, to be dominant. Then two models, whether there's God or whether there's no God. Now, seeking relief in religion, because the world is, as Jordan Peterson also says, the world is miserable, the world is hard, the life is very hard. So you look for relief in religion. And then, this is the logical chain leading to the belief in God. And I show how a simple man actually has no other chance than to believe in God. Then questioning of this God model, and then an example how religious belief actually works in reality, and then a world without religion. Is that hypothetically? So I try to imagine a world where there is no religion. Does that work? Would we be where we are at the moment? Would humanity even have survived without religion? Okay. And then the big thing, thinking. So while religion is kind of more the emotions, it's more like the limbic system and not the intellect. You have thinking with the intellect, and there are the different methods of thinking: biased thinking, critical, and egoistic thinking. Biased and egoistic are quite similar because they are not critical. Critical is it is as it is. Egoistic is coming from our ego here, and often fueled by, love, hate, fear, and so on, that then dominates the ego, and the ego then dominates the intelligence and the critical thinking. Now, that's a funny question. Does critical thinking depend on intelligence? So what IQ do you have to have in order to be a critical thinker? And I think it's relatively independent, but you need a specific type of intelligence to understand the physics that actually make critical thinking, the thing. You cannot say what is, it is as it is, if you don't understand what is. And then thinking traps created by the brain, that is actually these traps, is the title of the book, BraiTrix Trap. And then discussion between the two tribes, so between the critical and the non-critical thinker. And then challenging the unknown. And this is always, can you discuss things where if somebody says, okay, we're discussing this here in the system, but then the other person says, yes, but there is other things here. Now, so can you from here challenge the unknown? And that's the chapter here. Now, then the question, life. What is life? Other forms of life, on another planet, in another solar system, based on other components than we have here. Here's everything like built on water and these ribonucleins, acids that form all forms of life. And then this goes a little bit into this life in an alternative environment. So if there's no water, could there be a substitute for that? And then a characteristic of a natural intelligent being. Natural intelligent being now gets very interesting in the realm of artificial intelligence. What is an intelligent being? So when do you call somebody intelligent? When do you call a computer intelligent? Is intelligent also biased? Is biased intelligence? And so on. So if somebody is natural, then it's biased or not. So that question is discussed here. Then culture, ethics, and society. This is kind of the chapter, as I mentioned in the summary. This is where you interact in a group of people, while this how we think and whether we have a religion and what is life. I can kind of like look at how do I see that? But here, it's culture comes from interaction with many people. Ethics, can I behave in a certain way towards somebody else? And what does a society form? Are there hierarchies and so on? So this is the discussion here. Ethics. What is the reason for ethics? Do we need them? Are we more successful? Is life more successful because we have ethics? And then culture can make life very hard. Is that like that, or is it either is it easier with culture to live? And then there are some questions like how to organize a society, like hierarchical or democracy and so on. And then there is some kind of analysis how you can do that. I don't really remember here the spreadsheet. And then the best economical or social system. This is maybe here we will later on have something in, happiness. If somebody is happy is better than if somebody has lots of money. So happiness is kind of preferable. But how can you rate happiness? How can you kind of base a company on this company produces lots of happiness? So happiness. Sorry. The economical system that kind of optimizes these things, and then some things. When did culture start? And so difficulties in groups. When I think it's about groups. Having different groups contacting each other's. And then this big brother is watching, so Facebook or Alexa. Oh no, my Alexa is going, stop. Alexa, stop. Yeah, it's going on. So it's kind of this big brother. And is that a replacement of religion? And of control, control being, done by religion. Now control is being done by devices that we have, that we carry around with us, or we have in our buildings. And then, like this is kind of now with 10 is kind of the whole picture. It's a kind of a circle. The 10 pictures give the whole life circle. And then come some interesting questions. What I like is the sixth sense. Is there a sixth sense? Or is sixth sense just the combination of many senses plus the internal interpretation of these signals that go in, and mainly done by the limbic system? The limbic system, which kind of represents the whole model, and the reply from the limbic system is done in one calculation. It is, brutally parallel, billions of axioms firing, giving a thought, and that is fantastic. It's like the intellect is completely, serial, and this is 1,000,000 times faster, but also not as precise. But this is kind of the sixth sense. Then, this is this philosophical discussion: do we have free will? Which is very funny because it depends on what you see. There is no free will, but you don't notice that you don't have free will, and so on. So this is a very tricky question. What are emotions like love or hate? In the end, they are just stuff that is done by the reptile brain and limbic system. And here, I think it's limbic system, right? So intellect is human perfection. This is a very, very, very interesting chapter. What does human perfection mean? So perfect love means you are not perfect. If you're perfect, it wouldn't be a perfect love. And here there are new things that I haven't known while I was writing this book, like the relationship between female and male is based on a human disperfection, so that the female plays a role and the male plays a role, and if the male doesn't play his role, the female gets very upset, overtakes the man and gets upset, and eventually kind of is very unhappy, destroys him, and then is unhappy too. So you know, this is kind of a chapter. It's very, very interesting, but I think it's not perfect in this book because it was written when I didn't know that. The perfect interpersonal relationship, you know, how to interact with somebody, and then there's this question: can a human be perfect? And as I said, I think a human can be, you know, through his imperfection and humility, about humbleness, and so can be actually perfect. So, but that's a tricky thing. And then, one of my favorite chapters is happiness. Sean Anker, you know, Sean Anker is fantastic in that respect, where he showed that we have this positive psychology, where we have it completely wrong, the wrong way around. So that's very good. So why do we need economical growth is also one of these things where I think we don't need it, but well, we need it because our economy is constructed like it is, shareholder and so on. How to discuss avoiding conflict. That is, you know, this was born out of the fact that when I was discussing as a critical thinker, CT, I often ran into conflict with people, mainly with women, that said, "You're so harsh. You have no feelings." I said, "Sorry, are we now discussing feelings and hugging? And you know, if you want to feel, okay, I also have a limbic system and I also have a reptile brain, but at the moment we are maybe you don't want to discuss it, but if I'm discussing it with my intellect, okay, tell me, and we can move to the limbic system, but that means that I now don't use my intellect anymore." You know, the solution to the smoker problem, because you know, a lot of times there was this thing like bashing smokers, but then everybody is a smoker because everybody does not do the perfect thing for his body, and the smoker does it maybe a little bit more severe damage to his body. But you know, somebody that eats unhealthy, that doesn't practice, that doesn't sleep enough, that doesn't have like a calm mind, that doesn't do meditation and so on, sorry, then you are below what you could reach. And that's the same with the smoker. Maybe you could say the smoker is at -10 and I'm only at -7. Yeah, okay, fine, but you're still at minus. You know, you should be maybe at the 0, or whatever you define this, like if 0 would be kind of the perfect life. Philosophy, our own death. That's interesting. What if we upload our personality on a computer and nobody notices that I'm dead, because all communication is done kind of via the phone, then nobody notices that I'm dead, and I actually also don't notice, so death is no problem. Sense of life, interesting. Why do we need fortune tellers? Oh, this is kind of philosophy. What will the future bring? Rebuild a human, this is this artificial intelligence. Problems in society, general problems, intellect becoming a new trend. This is, I think that like intellectual workers should be rock stars. Yeah, but that's you know, a cat video or some funny videos. They get 4 million clicks on YouTube, and somebody that is intellectually challenging, he's happy if he gets like 10K. Yeah, so the difference here, and that difference shows exactly this bread and games in the old Rome. It's you know, 1 to 1,000, you know, something like that. So one person is extremely intellectually charged and you know, fully loaded, like Jordan Peterson says. Try to kind of improve your knowledge for, let's say, 10 years, 20 years, and you'll be astonished how much you can achieve. Even if you start at an IQ of, I don't know, 100, if you for 10, 20 years follow this goal to achieve brilliance in many, many things, and you have a mentor and you have somebody that can guide you a little bit, you read, let's say, 1,000 books, and you understand them and put them in a right perspective. And that is why I wrote this book, and I wrote a second book, which is The Power of Being Brief. It's a German book. It's written in German, Die Macht der Kürze, and that is, if you have, that's actually why I wrote this, the BraiTrix trap, and to give a very, very simple system where you can put all of these 1,000 books, everything you read here, you can put into your system, and here it fits, and it makes you so fantastically powerful in terms of intellectual capabilities. Because if you have your system wrong, everything you read in this book will or many things will clash, and then you have damage here, clash here. But if things you read, you can put in, you check them, you can have some stuff here in like a twilight zone where you say, I've read this, but there's kind of a question, and I park them, whether I put them in the system or I alter them, put them in the system. I maybe read another part and then maybe eventually put that into my system. But if your system of the world is wrong, you're reading 1,000 books helps you very, very little. Okay. Then the 12 is great, philosophic statements. You have, it's here 13 pages, so maybe it's like 30 statements from Plato, for Nietzsche, and so on, and then say how well these statements, so quotes, 30 quotes, and then the percentage, how much they're valid according to me. And the same on famous quotes of, these are the normal people, so these are normal people's, well as this are fantastic philosophers, and then brainstorming. I like that chapter a lot, because throw these questions at me, and I already and I still now could kind of talk for hours and discuss for hours these questions. Limits of rational thinking. Could the world be run by a computer program? Would people be happy to be run by a computer program? And economy and the happiness of people. So, there's this $50,000 income net makes you happy, and if you have more, your happiness doesn't increase, and things like that. And then logic and life. Yeah, exactly, because logic and life, philosophy and physics, they are actually interrelated, because, if you experience something and then you say, oh yeah, that's logical, yeah, sure. Then your system, your system is right. And then logic and life, they fit, and you have a full fit. That's great. And designing alternative nature, we have that already somewhere. And what will the future bring? At what age should a child learn? Oh yeah, learn that Santa Claus is a fairy tale, which means at what age should a child go into critical thinking? And now the sense, yeah, I think this was a question, a morally important question for me, whether the death penalty is actually an option. And as far as I remember, I said no, because we have the money to feed these people, and we should not kill them, because there is no, but I now don't understand that, because there is actually no 100% evil. So if we are able to kind of maintain them somewhere, then without them doing harm to the population, then to other people, then that's fine. Okay, and then like collection of thoughts, conclusion, main statements are like this, I think 2 pages here, exactly 2 pages of main statements. And fantastic, I really enjoyed going through this. It took a long time, 24 minutes. So I'm very, very happy that I actually opened up this book again. And what I plan to do is to use my Tell a Friend tough format to explain actually every every subchapter, in videos that are around 10 minutes, but I have to admit often slip into 15 and more minutes. So I'd like to do that and then explain with graphics each single concept in this book, and that then allows to build this full picture of the world, which I think once you have the model of the world, if you have that correct, if that is fine, then I think you're up for a lot of progress in your life. Thank you very much for listening, and see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.